Hello, hello, hello. Hello there. Sad thing is today that even if we had a snow day today, we wouldn't be allowed to have one, right? Weird duplication in my ear. Sorry about that. So is this type of snow usual for this area? On the east side, we'd just be getting slush. Okay, yeah, there it is. Good morning. Yeah. You know, coming over here, I kind of expected getting more snow, and I'm very happy to see it, but this makes me remember all those winters on the east side of the state where everybody else would be getting snow and we would have gray slush and muck, and it was disgusting. At least here it's white snow, not nasty, like muddy stuff. Very true, yeah. Funny thing was, my first year of teaching, I broke my ankle playing hockey, and that was the year that we got a snowblower because I couldn't shovel the driveway anymore. And it was also the first year we actually got like a real snowfall, so I was very happy to see that. That was kind of fun though. My first actual real semester of teaching, I was teaching from a chair and I had to wear sweatpants because of the giant thing I had on my leg. It was very professional. Boo. Well, hey, I guess you're in the same time zone as us still, so class meeting should be pretty straightforward. See, I can appreciate the desire for warmth, but I think I would be miserable if I didn't have an actual winter. But that's just me. I spent my undergrad years in Sault Ste. Marie, so I went to Lake Superior State. So snow was my jam. 50 degrees outside. We prefer the term special. There we go. Let's- Aw, the neighbor kid's gonna go snow blow somebody else's driveway. That's cute. How's everybody's semester going so far? Going well, a lot more work this semester than last. Well, yeah. Could be that it's just one of those classes. Could be the professor is getting comfortable with their new delivery mode and thinks you all can handle it. I don't know. I at least try to space out my assignments in here so that it's not super stressful for all of you. This is the most chill semester. Ah, no EGR, there you go. Just CIS, right? Thanks for that. So the thing about this class is that it's all, I mean, I've got assignments that you have to do and little beats you have to hit to make sure you get the content down, but it's all really self-driven, so kind of the more you put into it, the better you're gonna be later in the semester with your term projects. All right, 9 o'clock. We can get started. Thank you for this delightful midnight radio. We can all start very chill Friday. Okay, couple of things for today. So your homework 2 part 1 is due tonight. And don't forget that it is due by midnight, so make sure that you get it in. If you haven't started it yet, I would highly recommend checking it out. And while I'm talking, is anybody else hearing that weird doubling of audio, or is that just in my headset? Because it sounds weird to me, but these headphones do very bizarre things from time to time. I'm not seeing any doubling. Okay, good. I'm hearing like myself in stereo. And if you've ever listened to yourself speak when you're recorded, you sound awful. That's what I'm hearing. So, at least, that's how I feel. I'm sure you all think, yeah, it's awful too. Anyway, yeah, homework 2 part 1 is due tonight. I'm going to make the second part of the homework available later today. And that's going to be partially individual and partially team-based. The intro to Git that you are doing right now should be an indicator that part 2 is going to be all about Git and GitHub. And what you're really going to be doing is, again, setting up a personal Git repository and setting up a team project Git repository. And with the team project one, there's going to be one person in charge of it, and you have to grant access to everybody else because that's the way the GitHub repositories work. There's one person in charge. So it will become apparent what you have to do, and I've got instructions in the lab manual for how to do everything, so I can kind of show you a little bit what's going on here. Basically, I give you all the commands that you have to do, so it's shouldn't be out of the realm of your comfort zone, even if you're not used to programming or anything like that. So we have that. End of class today. We've got a in-class assignment as well, so that'll be due by tomorrow night, as usual for in-class assignments. But that's going to lead into the fact that you are all now on project teams, and if you never turned in the first homework assignment, there's a few of you. I don't know what your Discord names are or your GitHub names, so I can't put you into project teams in Discord. So if you didn't turn that in, I will still accept it. But what you're going to see is under in Discord, there's a CIS350 team discussions. Let's close off all these other servers that you don't need to know I exist in. So there should be a team channel that you should see. So you should each see like a a text channel and a voice channel. Feel free to make use of it if you want. I will be able to see your messages as well, so I'll randomly pop in and say hi and things like that. If you're using your own servers, that's fine too. I'm not going to micromanage your teams, but if you need a place to chat, you have this for you. And it should just be your team members that have access to that, and me, basically, and me6, even though me6 isn't doing anything. So we have that going on. So if we hit 9:30, 9:35, and I'm still yammering on, please stop me. That's basically the last third of the class I want to be for your term project time. All right, everybody good? Questions at all? I notice some people are still having issues with the last problem in the homework. So feel free to drop by office hours after class if you're struggling. That one is a little bit tricky, but it can be done in 3 commands. So it's not super awful anyway. Otherwise, if we're all good, we're going to continue on with process models and hopefully get done. So we started off last time, just to recap a little bit. We talked about the fact that you need a process of some kind. We don't care which one you use as long as it's appropriate. There are flavors for whatever type of project you have. Sorry, I gotta. It's driving me nuts, this duplication. We talked about waterfall, we talked about the V model, and they're very similar, right? They're looking for fairly rigid requirements that are hopefully not going to change. Waterfall, you cannot go back. V model, you do have the capability to go back without restarting the whole project, but you still have a lot of effort to go through to get back to where you were if things change, right? So that's where we were. We talked about waterfall. Sorry, we added prototyping in as well to help give your team and your clients and your customers a picture of what's going on along the way. So that is where we are at. And with waterfall and with trying to close off some things here. Gives you an idea of what you're doing along the way. Again, every process is going to have very similar processes that have to be done. Like you have to define requirements, you have to define your process models, you have to define test cases, and you have to do customer acceptance testing and all that fun stuff. That's going to be in all of these models. It's just where you put them and how you interact with them is going to be the differences here. I'm going to stay on this model for 1 second while I recaffeinate. There is one box in here that you're going to be doing this semester specifically. So you're going to be making a system requirement specification. This is basically going to be your term project deliverable. Well, one of the bigger chunks of it. So when we start talking about requirements, make sure that you do a pretty reasonable job because that's going to be basically your term project deliverable at the end. Just as a forewarning. Okay, enough recapping. Moving on, we have a prototyping model. Now, this is still a very iterative model. It's not like evolving and changing over time, but we're going to base things around prototypes instead of, very rigid boxes that we go through. Now, if you look at this model here, or this process here, you start with requirements, but the difference between this and waterfall and V is that your requirements can be incomplete. They might be missing information. Maybe they're not correct, but you have a document that you're going to start with. And then you're going to start prototyping. So rather than building your actual production application, you're just going to build a prototype, and it might be a throwaway prototype. It might be something meant for internal consumption, maybe something to show the customer, but we're going to base everything around these prototypes. Right? So you're basically going to start with your system requirements, and then you're going to have things specific to this prototype. And you can work with your customer as you expand on this prototype. So really what we're doing is still the same steps as before, but the difference here is that we're actually bringing the customer in. And again, customer can be your end users. It can be somebody fronting the money for this project. It can be an internal project. Customer is just another stakeholder, right? Well, we're going to include them in our requirements specification process. Here is where we are at with our prototype. What do you think? Oh, we have all these changes that you should make. Great. And if you look at this, to you right now, it's going to look like boxes with arrows and some old guy yammering on about it. But what's happening here is that we are saving ourselves a crap ton of headache when we get to acceptance testing way down the line because the customer had input along the way, right? They told us, well, yeah, and we gave you these initial requirements, but now that we see your prototype, they don't all make sense, right? So rather than being surprised at the very end, they have input along the way. And that could be good and bad, right? Again, class of trade-offs. Maybe the customer keeps requesting changes and we keep having to prototype, prototype, prototype. Could be good, could be bad, but at least they're aware of what's going on. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Collaboration and communication is kind of the key to a successful project. And why not bring the customer in along the way? So that's mainly the requirements stage. You get to the design, you get to the system development, testing. Basically, you're seeing all of these arrows going back and forth where we have a lot of flexibility here, right? Let's say our prototype requirements are good, and then we start creating our design. Turns out that's good too. Maybe we have some revisions along the way, but then we get to our actual implementation, and maybe it is mathematically impossible to build the system that we have specified. Okay, let's tweak some things. We have a list of revisions that feeds back into our design. Maybe it can be fixed at the architecture level by moving some pieces around or adding in another module to, do something. We don't have to go all the way back to the beginning here. So a model like this, it's still, we're not doing a lot of going back and forth, but just by kind of increasing the communication, ideally you have a lot of time savings here. And it brings everybody on board. That reduces risk, it reduces uncertainty. And what is going to become very apparent, uncertainty is not something you want in your projects. So we have prototyping, that is another model. Another one that we have, still kind of iterative, and I'm saying iterative very specifically, waterfall, V, prototyping, phase development, these are iterative models, meaning you have a process that you kind of chunk through and then you're done. There's no going back and changing things along the way specifically. Agile's more evolutionary, things of that nature. So, phase development, we have the incremental view and the iterative view. Basically, what we're doing here is that we're going to be developing software in pieces. So before we had prototypes, where we basically have a functioning prototype of this whole thing, now we're going to be doing basically like release candidates, where maybe we have this functioning piece of software. Here's where we are at. Okay, here's another functioning piece. What do you think, Mr. Customer? Right, so basically what you're seeing is, again, it's similar to prototyping, but it's more piecemeal. Now, oh, another way to think of it, let me just pop over to the figure here. We may have a build version and then a release version, right? So think of this like any software package that you are using. And honestly, like Android operating systems are a great example of this. You are using, I don't know, I don't even know where we're at with Android naming. You're using Marshmallow here. That was their previous build release internally. They're already working on the next iteration of Android. And then once they're done, you get that. They immediately start working on the next release. So basically what we have here, it's called phased for a reason. Basically, you have a internal builds that you're working on. You release that to the customers. The customers start using that. And in this particular view, maybe it's not fully featured. Again, maybe you've given them a piece, maybe it's the whole thing, but you have internal releases and external releases here. This gives your clients and your customers, again, the ability to see what you're working on, depending if we are not at production ready or maybe we are production ready, that can be used for both. But you have a iterative development, and then once you get to the final release, then you're done, right? Short of maintenance, I suppose. And here is basically another view. So this is more of a, more of a phased view. Again, kind of iterative in a way. Um, Here we have a very incremental view, and again, pretty similar. We might have internal releases along the way, and then we deliver that release. So this is kind of an exploded view of what this would look like, right? So if I've got a build release here, that build release might be a series of increments or steps. And then when we get to this pink box, which means that we are done with this particular set of steps we have to do, send it to the clients. Move on immediately to the next increment. And if you look at this legend here, you also see that these colors actually mean something. And if you are colorblind, hopefully there is enough gradient differentiation here. But basically, you start seeing very similar steps as other processes, right? Let's plan it, let's model it, let's build it, let's deploy it. Sub increments are basically doing this, and then you give your customer the output of that release. So kind of the idea is basically just kind of summarize here. Um, I said this is incremental or iterative. These are both phase types of developments. If we're going incremental, you start with a small functioning thing and you build on that, right? So the little picture here is widget one. Let's add on widget two. Let's add on widget three, and then you have your fully featured system. Think of incremental like an early access game that you buy where the main area isn't fully fleshed out yet. You have the gameplay loop, maybe you have the tutorial area, maybe you have World 1. Worlds 2 through 10 are awaiting Kickstarter funding or something like that. But you start with a small piece and you build on that. Iterative is the other side of things, where you have the fully mature release ready to go, but you need to refine it still. So maybe you have to work on the subsystems as we go because they're not fully fleshed out yet. So here you see the full picture is done, but we're going to work on and finalize their subsystems as we go. That makes sense, the difference between the two? Yes, yes, yes. Okay. So this is kind of desirable, this approach. Let me pop these points on here. I was going to stop and ask you why you thought this was good, but I want to make sure you all have enough time for your group stuff today. Um, this is kind of a nice approach from a software management perspective and software engineering perspective because, again, the developers are not the only piece of this puzzle. They're not the only aspects to a project. We need to train our clients. We need to make sure that the market is ready for this product. We need to be able to hype it up so that people are excited to buy it, right? And if you have a very long, drawn out development process like with Waterfall, you can't show anybody something until you're done. Press releases and screenshots only take you so far. You need to start demonstrating things, right? And think of this in terms of like game design. You see this time and time again. Let's hype up our product to get people ready to buy it on day one. But this also applies to boring applications like embedded systems or to, you know, Windows applications or stuff like that. You need to be able to show functionality so that people can get ready for it. Something as simple as training. Maybe it's a medical system. Let's start building our training materials for the nurses and the doctors and the technicians who have to use it. That way, we don't have to wait till the end of the project to do this. We can do it in parallel. And if you have a prototype or some kind of functionality, you can start doing that, right? Um, so training, get our markets ready for it. Maybe if we are developing globally, which is something that you're probably all going to have to deal with now that we're in basically a global economy, something that you put out on, say, GitHub or an app store, anybody across the world can deal with that or can download it, right? But what that means is that now not only do you have to support your local group of friends who you pressure into buying your app, um, maybe somebody using a different language wants to use your application. Maybe somebody who is using a phone that has a different aspect ratio than what you ever expected to have now is going to want to buy your product, right? You may have issues that you never thought of, and that goes with that uncertainty notion. If you start releasing frequently and early, you can deal with these as they crop up before you hit version 1.0. It's kind of a nice thing to have that communication early on and prototypes at the expense of people, possibly seeing problems, right? So that's kind of a nice way of doing things. Okay, 10-ish minutes left before we break off for group stuff. Next one's the spiral model. This one is still not the new and interesting things. This was proposed in 88, but it is a very evolutionary model, basically. This concept is based around planning, figuring out your goals. With those goals are going to be what are alternatives or issues or constraints to satisfying these goals. And if you don't know what a goal is, it's a very ethereal term in software engineering, it means different things to different people. Basically, it's just a high level requirement that is kind of capturing something you have to do. It's that was very wishy-washy, I know, but goals are kind of high level. They're not specific. They're just, I need to do this. Um, but let's say we have goals, and if you have a goal, maybe you identify, oh crap, this might happen. Well, what do we do to solve that? Right? So if there's an alternative, what are the risks to this thing? So again, high level thinking at these first three steps, and then do your development, do your testing. So these are the 4 points with spiral. And it looks something like this. I've got another figure here which is a little bit less pixelated, but this one has more info on it. Basically, you start and then you just kind of spiral around these 4 quadrants, right? So this is very busy. I'll walk you through it here. We start, we plan out our budget, we figure out our goals and any alternatives to goals that we might not be able to do. Are there constraints to our project we have to worry about? Right, going back to the app idea, are we going to constrain ourselves to a particular aspect ratio or screen orientation? Are we going to allow touch or keyboards? What are the constraints here? All right, so this is our determination phase. Undertale quote, insert here. Um, but you start here, then you move over to the evaluation phase. What are the alternatives? What are the risks? Again, mental models here at this point. Go into your design and test aspect, right? So start building things. Go over to your planning phase. Do we add in requirements and maybe long-term plans? And then you go through the spiral multiple times. Basically, you're redoing and refining your artifacts and your processes as you go. And then hopefully, at the very end, you get into your acceptance testing, your integration testing, your designs are verified, things of that nature. But it's a very evolutionary process because things are building on each other as we go. And the nice thing here is that you're basically refining your models, right? You're doing bits and pieces as you go, but hopefully they're getting stronger and stronger and stronger along the way. And you can have communication with your customer in here. You can, deliver prototypes to your user base if you want and see what people like, what people don't like, and then incorporate that into your next cycle of the spiral. So here's another picture as well. Less information, but the quadrants are a little bit more clear. So we have communication, planning, modeling, construction, deployments, communication, planning, modeling, construction, deployment. Keep going around until everybody's happy, release, and then maintain. So this is kind of a nice approach, similar to the last one, in that there is constant interaction amongst team members, amongst customers. It's kind of getting towards a very open environment for development. All right, so those are all of the old and boring ones. And I say boring because they're proven to work, and something that management loves is things that are proven to work. You have a checklist of things you have to do, and that's our job. Okay, now we're going to talk about the super exciting one, Agile, which I was horribly against for the longest period of time, but I can see the benefit to it, so I'm not going to bag on it too much. Um, but that's just from my background. Everybody uses Agile, so I'm not, it's just me being pedantic, I suppose. Um, Agile's thing is quick releases very, very often, very, very well done. Agile is very freeform, and honestly, the thing that drives me nuts about Agile is not the process. The process is fine. It's the fact that it's the buzzword language. There are so many annoying conferences and buzzwords that surround this thing that the problem is that people kind of glom onto buzzwords and they make their teams do it, and that just destroys an internal culture. Um, I had one person last semester tell me that their team switched over to Agile mid-project because somebody heard about Agile and said, "Hey, we should be doing that because everybody else is doing it." And they were probably the only success story where switching was a good idea. Generally, if you switch process models midstream, you're inviting yourself to early failure because now everybody's got to start and learn this new thing. Um, Bit of an aside there, I suppose. Just be aware it's the buzzwordy thing right now. Basically, the thing with Agile, and Agile has many different processes underneath it. It's like an umbrella term. We care about the person over the process, right? So you, the team member, are more important than the process in making the software. Um, I would rather, let's say that we're doing Agile here. We would rather you do good working software rather than good documentation, which is something that as an engineer doesn't sound great at the first glance, right? You want good documentation to be able to prove that your software is doing what it says it should be doing. Um, but with Agile, we care about collaboration, we care about software, and we will formalize our documentation when we're done. So it's kind of a different approach to making software. Now, where this is good is that if you have requirements that are constantly changing, maybe your customer doesn't know they're behind from a hole in the ground to clean it up for kids, I suppose. They keep feeding you changes, right? We like your GUI, but we'd like it better if it looked like this brand new thing that just came out. Start from scratch. And you say, okay, you don't have to go back and redo all these steps because you have a very free environment, right? We care about collaboration. We care about change and being able to respond to that. So basically, you are the cool developer, I suppose. There are many different types, like I mentioned. There is extreme programming, which sounds like something that came out of the 90s when everything was extreme. It's one of the subsets of Agile. We'll talk about, kind of Scrum and Extreme and Kanban and all those fun ones. But basically here, I just want you to be aware that there are different flavors of Agile. Extreme is one of them. Crystal Agile is one that you don't necessarily hear about as much in popular media, but basically you have a set of specific features to make it crystal. So um, every project is unique. Every project should have X, Y, and Z. Um, that's a whole subset that we're not going to get into. There's Scrum, where you have daily Scrum meetings where people kind of get together and talk, do your daily stand-up, say what you've been working on, what you're planning on doing tomorrow. Maybe you pick a new task depending on your environment. And then you might have like a 30-day scrum or a 30-day sprint or something like that. I'm sure some of you have been forced to do that already for a term project, depending on your professor. We have adaptive software development, which is a whole other thing. Again, the key here is not really to get down in the weeds of these different techniques. You can get certified. You can be a certified Scrum Master if that's the field you want to go into, or you can be an extreme programming. I don't know what the official term is. It's not black belt, but basically they have their own little lingos. And again, the key isn't really to get into what each of these are. We care more about what Agile is as a whole here, and you're going to be exposed to that. Where are we at? We've got a few more. So let me talk about extreme programming, and then we'll pop over to your Discord rooms. Um, with extreme, and this is going to be similar in some of the other topics as well, with obviously different flavors. Communication, I mentioned that's a big thing with Agile. Your customers, your developers should always be talking. Basically, your customer gets their dirty little fingers in your project, and you have to support them. So, constant change, constant communication. Everything should be simple. So, if you have different design perspectives that you're evaluating, maybe somebody wants to do this beautiful massively scoped OOP design, and somebody has a very simple, I don't know, material design or something like that. You're going to pick the simpler one because everybody can get on board with that. But you also have this courage aspect. So our determination, basically, we are going to commit to delivering early and often. It's okay to fail in extreme programming in Agile as long as we fix it. Basically, we're giving our customer, hey, this is where we're at. Maybe it's not perfect, but this is the direction we're going. What do you think? Right? You don't have to always present something polished. You just say, hey, this is where we're at. It doesn't work, but this is a design we like. What do you think? And then you solicit feedback, basically get your internal team talking, get your customer talking, and feedback all that information into your next design sprint, for instance. And there is this idea of facets of XP, for instance. Um, do lots of planning, do lots of small releases. You could do test-driven development, which is something we'll talk about later on. Um, Continuous integration we'll talk about later on as well. But kind of the key thing with these is that you, the developer, are the important piece, right? We want the developers to always be learning, learn a new technology, learn a new thing. Go out of your comfort zone and try something new to see if it will help the project. And I'm kind of, abstracting all of this out a little bit. I don't want to, give the short end of the stick to these processes, but they're all similar. Basically, the key is be flexible enough that you can explore new things. Be courageous enough to fail in front of your customers, which as a programmer and software engineer can be a scary thing, right? You don't want to show that the code that you wrote sucks. But if this is where we're going and we can get good feedback, we can fix things, right? So basically try to have a good work-life balance, do new and interesting things, and do it sustainably. No crunch here. 40 hours a week and, go home and play with your family or your kids or something like that, or relax on the weekends if that's not in the cards. But basically, don't burn yourself out is kind of the key here. All right, so what I want to do now is let's go over and give you the time that you need. So we've got about 20 minutes left in class. Um, what I would like you to do, so I'm going to make this available now in, up, up, up. Come on, Google. Why did you make F11 get out of full screen? So this is hidden. I need to unhide it. But what I'd like you to do is go over to Discord, join your project team rooms. Again, I showed that at the beginning of class. And where are we at? It's available. So you have an in-class assignment due tomorrow night. Basically what I'm looking for here, and we need that, is I want your teams to figure out a actual team name and make it please safe for work so that if my kids wander in and see it, that I don't have to explain to them um, the facts of life before they're teenagers. or or explain to my superiors why I've got silly team names like that. But come up with a team name and come up with a tentative project idea and a language that you're planning on using. And the reason why I'm having you do this is that not everybody has done this yet. I've got, I think, one or two teams that know what they're doing, and everybody else is TBD or undetermined. So please come up with a formal team name that I can call your teams and that I can set in Blackboard and Discord and all that. And come together on a term project. If not everybody in your team is there, do your best. It's due by tomorrow night, so you have that. But if you already have these things, spend some time fleshing out your ideas, right? So iterate. Your next assignment, or one of your next assignments for your teams, is going to be a project proposal where you specify exactly what you're going to be doing for the rest of the semester. So if you've already done this, spend 1 second, make sure everybody's on board, then talk about ideas of how you want to approach things and what your end goals are going to be. But if you're not quite there yet, get at least to this point. And to Mr. Ganzatron, it's so much more fun calling you by your internet names. Um, yes, one per team. So this is a group submission. What should we upload if we are at that point then? So what you can do is make sure you submit these just so that I am clear on what your teams are. You can add an extra information if you want early feedback too. So if your teams have, maybe you have an idea of where you want to go with your project, write a short paragraph that says this is what we're thinking of doing, and I can give you very early feedback to say that's way out of scope, that's a great idea, maybe focus on this, 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 and this. It's up to you. Basically, this is hopefully all for your benefits. And it's for my benefit so that I don't have team TBD, team undefined, team will change our name later. But is that clear? And if anybody has any questions, please feel free to summon me into your rooms too. Again, I see a couple of you are already talking in there. Just ping me in Discord and I'll join. Is our final exam going to be a test or is it going to be project rated? Your final exam is going to be a test, at least at this point. So we have a midterm and a final. Midterm will be the first half of the semester, the final will be the second half of the semester. In the last week of class, we'll do term project presentations. I can promise you your final exam won't be too bad, though. Since this is the first time you're all having me as a professor, my stance on exams is that I'm not going to throw you any curveballs. It's all straightforward what we did in class. That's my perspective on exams. I don't need to show you how smart I am by making you all fail. As long as you keep up with the material, you'll be fine. How did you... Okay, looking at stuff. And if you are one of the students who did not send in your last homework assignment, message me in Discord and I will add you to the appropriate team if you're here. But everybody good on what I'm looking for? So let's do Saturday night. Let me write that in as well. Yep, good. Okay. I'm gonna pop in some. Oh, what are we looking for? Chill Wave. Aqua Teen Hunger Force. Girl in Space playing video games. Yeah, pickled onions. There we go. Do some Cyberpunk Wave. And I'll turn that down a bit. But yeah, one per team. You should see that once a team member is submitted, you should see it as gone from your submissions. Alright, Blackboard should be up to date. Hopefully nothing crazy pops up on this visualizer here. Make sure I'm not hiding chat there. Okay. Escape hours are 6th number. kind of watching Discord, so if you are all done, feel free to, you don't have to hang around until 9:50 if your teams are all done. This is intended to be your time, so. It's 17 degrees out. It is frigid. Alright, we have 4 minutes of class left. Anybody have any questions you want answered, or are we all good? All good. Cool. One of our partners is not on. Yeah, I figured that might be the case. That's why I gave you an extra day. Try to get a hold of them and make sure they're on board. If not, just submit what you've got by tomorrow night and refine it as we go, I suppose. Yeah. That's one of the problems with online class, or even classes in general. If somebody's not there, it is what it is. Yep. No worries. It's oddly quiet in here. My stream yesterday for graphics was fun because my kids were all hungry, and one of them was teething, and they're just screaming. Unhappy. I had to end class a little bit early because of it. That's fun. Alrighty, well, if that is all your questions, I'll end the stream here. Hope you all have a wonderful weekend. I'll see you Monday. And enjoy the snow, hopefully. Snow's your thing. It looks utterly delightful outside. You have a great weekend as well. And again, if you came in late, don't forget, homework's due tonight. Bye, everybody.